Great. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. This is the February 27th, 2024 meeting of the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. To get the meeting started, there we go. You want me to restart just in case? Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the February 27th, 2024 meeting of the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. To get the meeting started, I will have all of us introduce ourselves by going around. Leanna Bellis, Chair.
Catherine Robinson, Associate Director, School of Nursing, UMaine. Rebecca Jones, member of the committee.
Tracy Willett, Parks and Recreation Director for the city.
Andre Chassé, Retirement Benefits Manager, Northern Lighthouse.
Got that TV stuff.
I was gonna say.
They're on little junior Bangor school bus driver.
Jason Caniff, Director of Peace Studies, UMaine.
Anya Collette, Planning Officer for the City of Bangor.
And I'm Debbie Laurie, I'm the city manager.
Great, thank you so much, everyone. We'll go ahead and get this meeting started with approval of minutes from the January 23rd, 2024 meeting. And the meeting minutes should have been included in the packet that was sent to you. Can I get a motion on the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
thank you. Any changes or any discussion on the meeting minutes that we should note? Changes or anything to that effect? 'Cause I know you all read them with great enthusiasm. Seeing none, the meeting minutes are approved as they are. We're gonna go on to item number 2, which is a review of the city council agenda, and I believe, Debbie, that was.
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and turn most of this over to Anya, so we have a couple of items here that had recently gone to the council or are about to go to the council, so wanted to update you on that. Obviously, one relates to climate change and some of the initiatives and investments we're gonna be making, and then obviously housing. The nice changes we're gonna make. So go ahead, Anya.
So the first one we'll talk about is the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program. This is a grant that's from the federal government, and they have a formula grant program for certain cities. Bangor is one of those cities. We've been allocated about $76,000. And that money can be used for a wide range of things related to energy efficiency and transportation, buildings, and things like that. But for the purposes of this grant, we decided it'd be best to focus on bicycle infrastructure, because we've seen that as a big need in the city when we talk to people on the comprehensive plan. And then in many other venues as well, came across as a need. And so what we're looking at doing is focusing on the downtown, as far as putting in bike racks. So scattering those throughout downtown. We've reached out to the schools to see if they have a need for additional bike racks, and also, Community Connector. We're working with them to install bike racks at some of their bus shelters. And We've also reached out to the airport, so really just getting a sense of the need from a bunch of different sectors in the city. And then, once we have, on top of that, we are also looking at secure bicycle storage in the parking garage downtown. And so, whatever is left from that, we've talked about creating a bicycle rebate program, mainly focused on e-bikes. And we would either wholly, gear that towards low to moderate income residents, or make a tiered program where those residents would have a higher rebate and then possibly a lower rebate for people outside of those income thresholds. And I think that was everything. So I'm happy to hear any feedback. We're still just in the planning phase of this. The due date is April 30th, so trying to get everything rolling when we submit. So, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about that particular topic? So 76,000 is just what you've allocated specific to this, but it was a larger pool of money that you've received.
No, that's all that we've received, 76,000. So,
But as we move through the finalization of the climate action plan, which I believe is coming to GovOps in April, there are a multitude of programs at the state level that we can apply for funding for once that plan is finalized. From like an EV, I mean, you know, one of the common things people think about are EV chargers, and there are a lot of different pots of money.
right.
But a lot of them are pretty specific as to what you may or may not qualify for. So we had an opportunity to identify sort of the gap in our community and to support the work that's being done by our livable communities as well.
Right, and not all of that funding is available now, but we anticipate it becoming available, and it will just be focused on EV charging infrastructure. A lot of focus has been on EVs, and that's great because that, you know, that's a need too. But at the same time, I do think there's been kind of a lack of focus on other modes of transportation. And e-bikes in particular are actually known to be a lot more efficient than EVs, for getting around. And so, and you know, they also have benefits as far as noise pollution, reducing noise pollution, reducing congestion, reducing the wear and tear on roads. So, we really thought it would be good to kind of focus, like Deb said, on that gap.
Nothing else on that one? All right,
Okay.
next topic.
So this is, a council order that is currently on the agenda as far as co-living dormitories. So this is a new type of housing, that we're proposing, and it falls under the housing type of single room occupancy. We do currently have, another type of housing that falls under that called boarding houses. That was passed, I think a year or two ago. And this is similar, but it's different because it would be bigger in scale. So it would be 8 or more rooms in a building, whereas boarding houses would be 7 or fewer. And then in addition, it would allow up to 25% of the building to be used for short-term use rather than having the whole building be used for long-term use. And the purpose of that was just to provide some flexibility for people that might be in between places to live or just might be visiting the city. Just any type of people that would just need a place to stay for like a few days to a few weeks. But 75% of the building would still need to be used for long-term housing, just to make sure we're retaining that housing supply. Other factors are it would require a full kitchen for all of the residents to use, and other shared common spaces. And that does two things. One, it kind of creates a community in these types of housing. And then the other thing it does is by not having like individual units and having more shared space and having smaller rooms, it increases the affordability of creating this type of housing, which then hopefully will pass on to the tenant. The other thing is that it would only require one space per 3 rooms, but along with that, it would also need to be close to public transit. So the hope is that people, you know, using these types of facilities won't need to drive as much. They can use transit more and things like that. So we are proposing to add this use to several different zones, downtown, multifamily and service, our major, commercial districts out by the mall, and things like that. So I think that was everything. Are there any questions on that?
More from the space of curiosity.
Yeah.
In terms of like, square footage, I'm imagining hostel style
Yeah.
dormitories. I've got a lot of different references in my range.
Quite literally college dormitories.
Yeah,
and
well,
hostel
right,
style.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
What's sort of like the square footage of there, you said there's co-living dormitories and then there's boarding housing.
Mhm.
Just how might they compare to like your standard hotel room?
So it would be pretty similar. We don't lay out minimum square footage because that's kind of outside the purview of, zoning. But it is a little different in that it does require that full kitchen, whereas you see with a lot of college dorms, they don't necessarily have a full kitchen because they expect students to go to like the cafeteria. Since that's not, that wouldn't be there in this case, we want them to have that full kitchen. But there are building code requirements as far as the square footage required per person in a building. And so that will govern that more. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Sorry if I already said this. I was typing. What type of people does this, are eligible for this, or how do people
Anybody.
apply? How
Anybody.
does this?
Yep, it would be for anybody. It's just a new type of rental housing, basically. So anybody in the city could apply, and it's, the purpose is really just to create another type of affordable housing for people. And the target demographic would be anticipated to be like younger people who, might potentially be working at some of the places in the mall area, or maybe not. It just depends. But just people who need an affordable place to stay.
So basically, it's allowing for this type of housing to exist and then contractors coming through wishing to build it, basically,
Yeah.
buying the land, yeah.
Right.
So kind of a similar question I have, which is, I could see this as being a really good option for individuals who might have disabilities, developmental, intellectual disabilities, who might do good in those kind of settings. Is that part of that discussion? Like, is that an idea that has come to when you were thinking about this? Or is it really just, we're just trying to sustain the housing needs of the area, making sure we.
The latter, the housing needs, but, it would be great too if it could accommodate people with disabilities. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just another question. I apologize if you already mentioned this, but like, I love the idea of like having more supportive housing because we do need that. But when you say affordable, what do you mean by affordable? Because I think a lot of people hear affordable, and affordable means for some, it's regulated, the cost of it's regulated,
Yeah.
and then for others, it's whatever the
So
market
free
value
It's sort of
is.
the federal definition of what federal
Right,
government would define as affordable.
so is that,
It's not the, regulated affordable. So I call it affordable with the lowercase a. It's just,
okay,
something the general public can afford.
okay, so is it going to be, like, is there going to be any sort of regulations or any sort of, I guess, rules placed on the developers to basically set like a standard for what affordable is, so people can actually afford it around here, or is it going to further push up the cost of housing?
There wouldn't be rules set, but I would think that, I would think that they would not be able to get people of higher incomes that would want to live in a place like this.
Mhm.
That's just my take.
Yeah, but if that's all
And
people
I-
can afford,
And
then,
I also think what we're hoping to do is to find a way to lower construction costs to create units.
Yeah.
okay,
And by allowing for, I think the provisions in the ordinance say that 10% of, the square footage has to be to common spaces. So for the kitchens, for the living rooms, for the communal type things. So by doing that and not requiring a kitchen and a living room, and having some flexibility. Our hope is we're gonna drive down the construction costs.
Okay.
And driving down the construction costs should result in rental.
I mean, it should.
Understood?
Yeah, because
Understood.
I saw a 1 bedroom available yesterday. I think it was on Facebook Marketplace. Recently renovated, and this is the same reason that all landlords are using for raising their prices, saying, oh, this was a recently renovated space. Therefore, I'm gonna charge $1,300 for a 1 bedroom, no utilities included. And that is how much they were asking.
And part of the.
And I'm
problem-
seeing more and more of those. So like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
don't think
understand.
we shouldn't just expect these developers to do the right thing.
But part of the problem is known to be a supply issue and that we don't have a lot of supply.
Yeah,
So the hope would be if they can create a larger facility that has a bunch more rooms, they're putting more of that into the market. And with that competition, the hope is that it would drive the prices down.
it'll help.
Yeah, and then also along with what Deb said, reducing the parking requirements can help a lot because parking does really add to construction costs. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a step in the right direction.
Jason?
Thank you for all this. I've got a lot of thoughts, but I'll share two. And in terms of like maybe a couple different demographics, and maybe that's not part of this stage of the conversation. But one demographic, and this came up, I think somebody in town is doing something around sort of second chance housing. So folks who maybe had an iffy rental history, or maybe had a felony at some point. Those folks who are working, they really want to get into the housing market in some variety. There's lots of people at that sort of edge right now. And I know there's a couple landlords in the area that are really kind of working with them. I'm wondering if maybe this might be a possible way to meet that particular demographic that we don't normally think about, who's not with active use, they're not homeless, they're sort of like they're there, they've got the money, but they're not given that chance. So the other demographic I thought about, which actually it might not be terribly relevant, but like co-working kind of stuff, right? So a lot of cities around the US right now are trying to attract people to come in, professionals come in the area, or either to relocate there, either pay the money to come there, or are trying to get them to come into town for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. I'm wondering if part of the 25% for short-term housing might be something that can be kind of marketed or pitched to folks who want to come to Maine. We have them come to Bangor to then live and work here for a few weeks in the summer or in the fall, which is very hard to do because it's so expensive in the summer. So it might be kind of a tourist kind of draw as well.
When this, if this change passes, are you planning on marketing to people or pushing the information out somehow to say this is a new opportunity? What does that look like?
we could do that. We do have a developer that's potentially interested in doing this kind of thing. But that is a good idea. And we do also have our housing dashboard we created, and we'll put that up there as well. But yeah, we should push that out more.
Any other questions related to this topic? All right.
And just to wrap up, so what the process is this is as first reading of the council. It'll be heard by the planning board next week.
Yeah.
And then based on the planning board, it will come back to council for final action. So this could be an eligible use as early as March 14th.
Yeah.
Because our ordinances take effect 10 days after adoption. So I've got the, sorry, 21st. I was going to the committee date, not the council date.
Yeah, I think it's the 21st.
It's 21st, yeah.
All right.
Your question.
No, I was just wondering, is there like a public comment period or,
That's
Okay.
held at the planning board.
okay,
Yep,
Yeah,
and that
I-
meeting is
I-
next Tuesday.
I'd
Yeah.
just be interested to see if there's any pushback on this type of like, boarding house, there may be some folks in neighborhoods, there may, the NIMBYs who would say, I don't want, 8 people living in the house next door. and they're gonna be using my parking and,
Well, this won't be
But
going
this-
in, URD one or URD
Right,
two,
okay.
which is where we saw a lot of that before with.
Okay.
So this is going into zone, so that's why we were really targeted with the zoning.
Okay.
It's kind of gonna fit with other multifamily unit housing. Or the shopping and personal services district, which, and I'm still learning the zoning, general commercial services,
Yeah.
i.e. the mall areas.
Yeah.
Where it does seem to be a good fit. And frankly, we've added residential as an eligible use in all of what typically used to be fully commercial.
Wow.
And we've done it to allow mixed use development, because mixed use development is the future in a lot of ways.
Mm.
The more flexibility we have, the more opportunities we provide.
Mhm.
And then, go ahead, you mentioned a developer, is there a certain area of land that there is up for discussion currently?
They are looking at two places out near the mall, so in the S&PS zone.
Okay.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of touched on this with the parking discussion, but we are looking at, proposing to reduce the minimum required off-street parking for residential units in general from 1.5 spaces to 1 space per unit. And the primary reasoning behind this, again, we're looking at housing affordability. Parking is known to add that construction cost. And a lot of what we see, and especially in recent years with developers, is that they're saying, our clients don't expect to have, a car, or they might only need 1 car per unit. So there's not that need for 1.5. Some places, some utilities have 2 spaces required per unit. And we're just not seeing that need. And then there's just a whole host of reasons why having excess parking is detrimental. I mean, it encourages people to drive. So then you have people who, might otherwise take public transit where they might walk or bike. But it also makes it harder to provide public transit and bike and walk, because it makes having excess parking causes development to sprawl out. So it makes it harder to get places. And then there's just, other impacts from the urban heat island effect to water runoff. And so a lot of cities all over the country are reducing or even eliminating parking minimums. And Dover, New Hampshire, and Burlington, Vermont are good examples from the Northeast, from New England, that have done that. And so we're just kind of looking at any and all ways we can approach creating more affordable housing. And so we are looking at putting this language before the council soon. We haven't put that in yet. But I just wanted to get any thoughts or questions on that.
Any questions, thoughts? I do have a question as I'm listening to this and I'm hearing use of public transportation and all this. I hear an immediate erasure of people with disabilities. So in these places where they're saying, no, there's no parking requirement, but that is someone's method of getting around is a car, that might have been adjusted for them and their needs. What does that look like?
So as part of this, I mean, we are beginning discussions on-street parking. We haven't decided anything at a staff level yet, but we are looking at that, and there would still be required minimum 1 space per dwelling unit. And we do actually also have in our code a requirement for handicap accessible parking space with any type of off-street parking. So they actually have to have that. And the other thought is that by reducing some of our excess parking, we can make public transit easier to provide. And I know that they are also making a lot of improvements to the public transit system. So it's hoped that that would kind of go hand in hand with this. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, but I heard the word hope, and things aren't happening at the same time and in balance with each other, right? You do leave people stranded. I'm not sure if you pay attention to anything that, happens over in the UK, but there's a big discussion about how inaccessible some of their trains are. people in wheelchairs can't get on train. Well, they haven't caught up with these things. And that's my concern is if we start making policy like this, do we have the other thing in place to ensure the thing that we're hoping happens actually happens, that it is actually accessible, and that we have people who can use it?
Yeah.
That would be my concern for that. Yes.
And just to like expand on that, it's not even just people with disabilities, but we live in a community where I think like the average age is what, like 48? Something like that. I know that's like the average for the state of Maine. It's high. Like we have the highest, like the oldest average age of people of anywhere in the country. So it's not just people with disabilities that we need to be considering. Yeah, it's mobility issues because like you see it even with like our housing stock, there's very little regulations on accessibility just into homes
Right.
and apartments. So never mind like looking at the transportation issue, like it goes hand in hand.
I would love to
So,
know how Dover and Burlington both addressed that. I think that would
Yeah.
be interesting to hear how they addressed it in their policies.
I will definitely look and see what other cities have done to account for that. And other cities like New York, where they clearly don't have a lot of off-street parking, I'd be interested to see what they do. But I will say, we do also have the paratransit system, that, anybody can call and use that has that need, so that service is there.
So I believe I'm scrolling through my head as these questions come up, but I believe all of our buses, can accommodate, ADA individuals. I also believe that includes, it used to be referred to as, so maybe Throne can help me with my bus terminology. It's like a low floor, it will, you have the ability to,
The lower
correct, to lower down the threshold,
But you
so
need
that
to
you
be,
don't create a barrier.
but you need to be on a bus route.
Is
Yeah.
it, but to Anya's point, if you are not on a bus route and you qualify, there is a program called paratransit. It's a requirement if you provide public transit.
So my follow-up question to that would be is how far in advance does someone have to schedule something
I
to
think
be
they-
able to use it?
I think most of the times it's a day. It's not, I don't believe it's too onerous at all.
but how
Almost
timely are
any-
they?
They're
Because,
very timely.
okay, because I mean, I've also heard that it's said about Penquist Cap, but working in healthcare, I know for a fact
Understood.
that
I
people
would-
have missed
I would perhaps
appointments.
agree with you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I would say to you that
I think the
We've done an
question is,
excellent
how do they reach out? How do individuals reach out to these services? Is it by phone or?
What's the technology?
Yeah, so it does, I don't have all the details, so I'm talking off the top of my head. So I believe there is an online mechanism, but I also believe there's a telephone mechanism. I'm not sure, I assume there's a TTY option, because we are accepting a significant amount of federal money, FTA money, Federal Transit Authority money, to operate a public bus system. And ensuring that a public bus system provides equitable service to all is paramount in your ability to actually accept those funds and to operate them. You wouldn't be allowed to accept funds, you would be disbarred.
Gotta meet the requirements.
Yes, that's pretty clear on that.
And, oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, just like a follow-up question.
Yeah.
To that, so, obviously, there's also a lot of stigma around using public transportation. I know our bus system has been improved greatly, but there's still a lot of stigma around it. And if you are somebody who is immunocompromised, maybe you might not want to use public transit. So like, that's another thing that needs to be looked at too, as to how the city is actually marketing it to, yeah.
And I think to Anya's point of the hopes is what we need is, I think many of us have been in cities where transportation by bus is the norm.
Yeah,
And it has been generations in this state where transportation by bus is not the norm. Everybody's gotta have a car. And changing that societal mindset. And by trying to encourage and make changes that will encourage additional ridership will go a long ways towards updating and changing the narrative that follows who rides a bus. And the additional thing is the higher you can drive your ridership, what that does is that gives you the capacity and the ability to expand service. If you don't it's all about volume. You can't operate a public transit system without adequate passenger volume, and we need to drive the volume up.
I know.
I'm gonna put bus on here, because I think that may come back as our accessibility,
Mm.
part of our accessibility questions.
When was, the last time, it was just a couple of years ago, they analyzed the bus routes? Was it just a couple of years ago?
I think so.
Yeah.
You can say a couple of years ago, it could be 4 months. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
And so this is going in front of council.
Yeah, the language, I'm gonna submit that this Friday, so.
So this will follow the similar process where it will go to council for first reading. Then it gets referred to the planning board,
Mhm.
where the planning board has, actually next week, they're gonna have sort of a work session on it too. But the planning board is in essence the public comment period, we can have these conversations. And then it comes back to the council for final action.
Okay.
And all of these things, all of the planning board, all of these things are public meetings.
Yeah.
We try to get the word out as many ways as we can, but
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, if there's more information or you guys wanna listen to more about this, these additional hearings that, points where they're gonna be talking about it, those are opportunities where you can watch online or presumably attend the meetings in person if you want to. So I was just gonna say, for anyone else who was curious about the rest of it.
and it also, while you're talking about other ways, little bit off topic, but somewhat related, is we've been trying to, through our social media feeds, push, spotlight, highlight items for the next week. So we're trying to lay those items out and try to bring attention to them. Because when you get a weekly packet like this, you may not go, oh, there's something on there about housing that I might want to know. So we're trying to highlight those topics that we think are, of most interest to the public, to try to draw your attention to it and not make you dig through everything to find out if something's happening.
Great. Thank you so much for coming in tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Alia. Yeah, no problem.
All right, so we're gonna move on to number 3, which is education. Tracy Willett,
Yes.
from Parks and Recreations, here to provide an overview of facilities and their programs. So I'm gonna turn it over.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep, Parks and Recreation here for the city is a variety of things. We do a little bit of everything around town. I'm trying to thumbnail that for you here tonight and certainly answer questions if you have them. We try to accomplish that with about 15, we call permanent employees. Of the rest of the staff, we're augmented by a variety of seasonal and temporary staff throughout the year, as well as a variety of volunteers that help us accomplish programming, events, and some trail maintenance and those kinds of things throughout the year. So it takes a lot of individuals to pull off what we do, and we're fortunate to have those that are willing to be with us part-time and throughout the year. Or the biggest part-time employee need that we have is in our Kids Cave Before and After School program, and I'll touch on that here in a minute. So we're broken up in about 9 different areas of functions that we do. Thank you for the.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the Scrabble word. We call those divisions. It's our Parks and Rec facility on Main Street. It's a recreation division. We have a summer camp division. The Kids Cave program I talked to you about earlier. Park maintenance, our swimming pools, the waterfront and the harbor, which also includes, and I'll touch on that right now, event permitting management. If indeed you're gonna have an event here, either in a street as a parade or a walk or a run, or using city property, that permitting process starts with the Parks and Recreation Department and then gets throughout the city staff as needed. Sawyer Arena is one of our areas as well, and also the golf course. So a lot of areas to cover and be responsible for. The Park and Rec Center, which is down on Main Street, is probably our primary location for a majority of the staff. They're also divided up a little bit to run the golf course, as I mentioned here a second ago, as well as Sawyer Arena. So currently we're in mid transition between winter and spring programming. When I left the building tonight, we've got a baton group using the building. We have them there on a regular basis. Basketball just kind of wrapped up, wrestling just kind of wrapped up, learn to skate just kind of wrapped up. The youth hockey season that takes place at Sawyer with our outside groups, both, school groups as well as youth hockey. They're kind of winding down. So we're kind of in that transition mode, from winter to spring when it comes to programming. Back to the rec center, we have also a variety of groups that come in, and use the facility on a regular basis. Interesting, we have an American Legion group that's met there since I can remember. And it's kind of a side story, but just to kind of illustrate the use of the facility that we have and making the best use and trying to accomplish as much as we can for the groups that want to make use of the facility. At one point, the upstairs level at the rec center was walled up between meeting space for the Legion and our Kids Cave program. Our after-school program was growing immensely. So there was just a walking about one day, and the president of that group said, "Hey, we need more space. Can we look downstairs?" One thing led to another, and we were able to remove a wall. And through an agreement to use the space cooperatively, their pictures, their certificates, all of their meeting wall hangings stayed, and our Kids Cave group was able to use that third floor space. And it's worked out great for everybody. The Legion has even come into, members of the Legion have even come into the Kids Cave program to speak, and the kids involved in the program see that material and really every day. So that's been a very good cooperative effort to try and maximize the space we have. We use every inch of the space at Parks and Rec down at what used to be a National Guard Armory. We've got a project we're just wrapping up that we're pretty excited about that I'll touch on before I end this evening. So that kind of gives you a nutshell of our functions, our divisions, what we try to do around the city, and the employees that we try to do it with. I mentioned the Park and Rec Center a minute ago. A variety of groups that use it. We've become a very popular birthday party destination. So if you're looking to have birthday parties, Sunday afternoons is when we carve out that time for that. And we're booked every Sunday. I mentioned the American Legion. We've got a couple of other groups that have been using the gym throughout the week because gym space is such a premium in the wintertime. Down East Horizons has been coming and using our facility once, twice a week. We have a Special Olympics group that's been coming in once or twice a week as well. We have another Special Olympics group that's been using Sawyer Arena. In the past, we've had a group from Alpha One play sled hockey at Sawyer Arena. So if we have the space and the schedule and the availability, we're welcome to use for whatever groups that need this kind of space, especially in the wintertime. As I said, indoor space is such a premium in the wintertime. But our outdoor space as well. We have a homeschool group that started out with us at the Union Street Complex, which is our primary outdoor facility. And from that, it developed a relationship that they now use our facility on Wednesday mornings. So again, an opportunity to maximize the space. We have a preschool open gym that is drop-in that has been immensely popular for a number of years. Gets plenty of use at the Park and Rec Center as well.
I'm just gonna say that it would, as Tracy continues through the litany of groups that utilize our facilities, I think the one thing to keep in mind is we talk about it being the Parks and Rec Center, but it acts more of a community center.
Absolutely.
It is here to meet the needs of the community, whatever the community may need. And so we're very adaptable.
Mhm.
It's not, premium space by any stretch of the imagination, but we get really inventive about, how we can juggle and meet the needs of the community, and the community members appreciate it. A lot of these are low to no cost.
Mhm.
It's an opportunity to enjoy, to interact, to engage in positive interactions for your own well-being, to build community. Do you still have a senior group that's coming in?
I was getting to that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
No, they're
And
stepping
then
in.
if you think about it, there's wreath making, there's yoga, there's fitness, there's a need.
The
we're
wreath
here to fill
making.
That was a big one.
The wreath making came about, one of the areas that we co-manage, if you will, with Public Works, and combined resources is the Roland Ferry City Forest, which also includes the Orno Bog Boardwalk, the entrance and exit to the Bog Boardwalk. A couple of years ago, and again, it's a couple of years ago, could have been 5.
No, it wasn't. The forest management studies, it's been in my tenure, so I'm good. I know that now.
We did a management plan for the Roland Perry City Forest, try and help guide us how to better educate folks about the resource that it is, help us manage the property when it comes to the forest, the species of trees. Should we be making sure that trails are groomed in a way that they're not overtaken by side vegetation? How do we do that? One of the suggestions that came out of that was in order to maintain the width of the trail so that they're not obstructing the use of the trail, is to use the spruce, the fir in a wreath making class. So we have an administrative assistant who, hey, can I try that? And as Deb mentioned, it's been immensely popular for us, to the point where she was gonna do centerpieces as well. But for the second winter, we had a full wreath making class, Parks and Rec, as a suggestion from the forest management plan.
And it's made from the harvesting we do within
Yeah.
our own forest.
Like many recreation departments, have a variety of youth activities and programs. I referenced the winter programming transitioning out of the wrestling program, and there's another one that came about much the same way. Started with a group of families that had some of their kids interested in participating in youth wrestling and needed a place to start that and go. And from that discussion, our youth wrestling program has been in place for 7 or 8 years now. Lacrosse started much the same way, youth lacrosse, to the point where now there are a boys and girls program at the high school. Maine Academy of Modern Music came to us in the need for space. So we figured out a way to make that happen and bring that under umbrella. So that group is actually, they're occasionally I'm in my office and they'll be rehearsing, if they're not up at the ski lodge at Essex Woods. They're in one of our rooms rehearsing or putting on one of their season-ending shows for parents and families. So that's a pretty good group. I think they've performed at some events here downtown as well. Dell program as well. You mentioned the senior group. We've got a group of seniors that comes in on a regular basis to play bingo, play cards. We've had senior fitness classes before when we've had instructor availability in the gym. So again, trying to utilize the space we have for as much as we can at the Park and Rec Center. I mentioned the activity that goes on at Sawyer Arena. We've had an adult group come in and play what they call lunchtime hockey during the week, 2 or 3 days a week. So that's worked out well. We're doing yoga right now. We have a line dancing group that comes in the mornings. Yes, line dancing is still a thing. They come in a couple of days a week as well. So all that happens. Most of it happens at the rec center down on Main Street, as well as Sawyer Arena. If the snow cooperates, we have been grooming trails, cross-country ski trails at the golf course through an arrangement with ski club. Snow hasn't been a level that we can do that. We'll get the groom, we'll get the machine, and the staff grooms quite a network of trails out the city forest. Variety of special events throughout the year, themed events or either adult youth events. Probably one of the biggest ones we got coming up here in a couple of months is a canoe race, Connecticut Street Canoe Race. That's always the third, well, I should say always, usually the third Saturday in April. There have been occasions where we've had to adjust that day. We always started at 8:30, always started at 8:30. It's canoe race, always started at 8:30, and we're having issues with the tide one year downtown. Why do we have to start at 8:30? Well, I don't know why we always start at 8:30. So we've been able to adjust the time, which worked out well, but it's a fairly large event. It's one of the largest open water canoe races in New England. Still is. It's not uncommon for us to attract 700 to 800 paddlers on the course of a Saturday. So when we descend on Condescate Village on that Saturday morning, it's quite a sight. But then again, that takes a variety of volunteer groups, our search and rescue groups primarily. They're a huge part of what we do, as well as our own police and fire and public works department. So That event is coming up and we do, again, a variety of events throughout the year. And we're always trying to come up with something different, something new. The staff actually is talking to Cross Center now about something perhaps this fall. So still working out the details on that around Halloween.
It's like a teaser.
That's like a tease,
Okay.
something around Halloween. So still working out the details on that. But will happen at the Cross Center.
Yeah.
So it's been good. Certainly, I mentioned the Kids Cave program. And I know we all talk about, everybody hears about the childcare needs, and we try to certainly fill that niche as much as we can. We have a full childcare program, 4.5 school program, that we use every inch of the rec center. We transitioned that to a summer camp. We've been fortunate to be able to utilize schools, different schools around the city. We also do a middle school camp that does different types of activities. They do more excursions as part of that program. That's been immensely popular for us. Those programs fill and are certainly an important part of what we do and an important service that we can provide. I still remember that summer camp transitioned out of the park playground program many years ago. So that's been very popular for us and continues to be, and we're fortunate. I mentioned this, the seasonal staff and the temporary staff that we use. We use a variety of individuals that come to us from all ages. And we're fortunate to have those folks that are willing to work 2 or 3 days a week or come to us in the summertime, or at the golf course. It's a fair amount of retirees that will show up at sunrise in the morning to
Because they like to mow grass.
to mow greens. We have one gentleman up there, former, that he's just elated that I show up, I get on my machine, I go mow my areas, and I'm done. That's valuable to us. It serves a need for them, and that they can pick up a part-time retirement job. So we're very fortunate to have all ages that are willing to put in the time for us. And of course, the high school and college youth that show up. We've got a group of kids that show up faithfully every morning at 6:45 in the morning. They're there, they're ready to greet kids. So very fortunate with that.
Yeah.
We talked
While
about,
you were there for a minute too, I think you may have heard a couple of years ago, there are always concerns about lifeguards, and there's some thoughts that were sort of, so lifeguards are a bit like unicorns. So if you can identify an individual who's willing to be a lifeguard, for the summer, it's a huge feat, and we're not always, so at times we have struggled, I'm not gonna lie.
we have mightily struggled, for
But
sure.
we offer the opportunity, if somebody has an interest in being a lifeguard, we'll help you get certified, we'll pay for it, we'll do it all. So we do what we can to grow.
What's the
those
minimum
employment-
age on that?
So you have to be at least 15
That's what I
to
thought,
pass the lifeguarding class. And so certainly my role, I've been here a number of years, I get asked often by parents, hey, my son or daughter looking for a summer job. My first question back to them, to Deb's point, can they swim? What do you mean? Wow. And it's interesting that's transition from the time when the list of applicants for those jobs were 40, 50 individuals. It's some responsibility, and I was gonna get to the pools here in a second, but while we're talking about it, so the Beth Pankow pool is one of the few like it in the state, in that it's got the slides, it's got the zero entry area, it's got the spray features, and then it's got the lap swim area. And on a hot summer day here, we don't see the crowds like we were generating when we first opened. It's gonna be 20 years.
Oh my God.
Yes, this summer's 20th year.
Oh my God. We
Um,
need a birthday party.
well, yes.
Okay.
It's a busy place, and it's a responsibility to sit in that chair and be responsible for that. And in the slide pool, there are occasions where it's not a huge emergency, but young children will get overwhelmed in the water and have to be pulled out. So if you're 16, 17 years old, dealing with that for the first time, that can be a little something. So it's a little different. But by the same token, as Deb mentioned, we'll certainly pay for the class. We have a process for that to accomplish that. You're amongst 20 to 25 folks during the summer, so, it can be a busy place and certainly, you're not bored there for sure. We try to complement that to give them kind of a different atmosphere at the Dakin Pool over off Pine Street.
You're gonna get a slide there, say you're gonna get a slide there.
So Deb's working on that.
Yeah.
Deb's working.
Not me.
No.
I'm not that,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not his
Deb-
dad.
Yeah, I was right.
Yeah,
Deb John
I
is
know
the-
Deb, Deb. That's
Yeah.
okay, let's be clear.
Saying that, standards for slides and swimming pools now are a little different when we bought the one that was there 20 some odd years ago. You need a dedicated area for the exit area, and in a pool, so trying to see if that will actually work at Dakin has been the challenge so far, but I know Deb Jandro in our office is working on that.
Can we incentivize with higher wages? Thinking back to when I was that age looking for a job, certainly you could be compelled to,
So we have a workforce of 600 individuals. And one thing we try to be mindful of is look across our entity to make sure that we are creating parity, not only with the market, but within the internal structure itself. So we went through this conversation, I think, when we were concerned we weren't gonna have enough lifeguards to open all the pools.
Mm.
It becomes difficult to say, today, a lifeguard, once we pay somebody something, we don't go back. So if you wanna pay them $30 this year, that's likely more than many of the other people in this community are making, or in our city is making. And is that the highest price? So we try to keep it in market. When there is no inventory, just like housing, we've been able to manage it. So incentivizing one group of employees over another is really not the best practice from a organizational standpoint. And I'm looking at Andre, because Andre is going from his HR head.
Of course, yeah.
And I certainly pay is part of it, and we've made some adjustments to
Right.
try to keep up with the minimum wage changes that here in Maine. I have maintained along with pay, it's as much the responsibility that comes with lifeguarding, and it's not just us. Every community that has a municipal pool, every organization that has a pool.
Or lakes or public parks
yeah,
or beaches.
The state, we work quite closely with the Y. Deb Jandro in our office, goes to Bangor High swim team, Brewer High swim team, John Bapst, Hassan, UMaine. Yeah, I think it's as much their perceived or real responsibility that does come with being a lifeguard. But we're getting better.
Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of getting better. Part of the initial crush of a lack of availability was COVID. Organizations like the Y just wasn't able to offer classes, so that started that tumble down effect.
I'm happy, so you connect with Hudson, like, do you contact their student employment office where they do hire?
So she, until I think Jeff left, I was talking to Jeff directly, Ren. That's where she starts, is with swim coaches.
Yeah.
To Hassan, on a larger, here's opportunity, actually, we were just there today, the job fair today, Zach Napsey, one of our recreation programmers, spent the day at Hassan.
Yeah.
At the career fair. We're gonna do the same thing, with high school. Both Bangor and Brewer does something similar. We have a real good connection with Rich Fabry in the sports management program. So, and we've had internships through him before, through Hassan before, so there is that connection for sure on a pretty regular basis.
I'm just thinking of like the summer students who
Yeah.
are trying to
Yeah.
make their wages by piecing jobs together.
And it's interesting that the Parks and Rec Department, a lot of times, is the entree into the workforce for many of the youth in our community. If you've participated in one of our youth programs, when you get old enough and you can come in and fill that role for what you enjoyed, I think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. But with that comes a responsibility from our supervisory staff to make sure that an employee who is new to the workforce has the skills and the understanding and the confidence to do the job that they're being asked to do, that they feel comfortable coming back and saying, I'm not sure this was the right thing, or I don't know what to do. And the fact that they have a personal connection with our programs, I think that relationship's already been established. So they probably know a lot of the supervisors, and they're comfortable saying, hey, you know, this is what happened, and it's a nice entry point, I think, in the workforce for many.
And that's exactly how we sell it, for lack of a better term, and what we talk about during all those orientations is this is often your first stop, your first job opportunity. And if you do a good job with us, whether it's in park maintenance, whether it's at the golf course, summer camp, we tend to rehire. So do you have the confidence that if you do well, then and if it fits into what your plans are for the following season, then you'll be able to return. The Kidscape staff is one of those examples where we work with those kids that are students. Their schedule changes every semester. So if they're available on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoons, that's gonna go to Tuesday, Thursday, Friday mornings in January. So we're able to adapt and work with that. Because we have good employees that are good at what they do and certainly help us, that's a win for both of us. A couple of other places I just want to touch on. I don't know how much more you want me to go, but I just left Jenny Kuhn, our administrative assistant. She manages a community garden for us. Probably 10, 12 years ago, much like some of the other programs and areas I've described to you, we had a group come to us looking to establish community garden in Bangor. At the time, our city parcel on Essex Street was not being used. It's referred to, if you lived here, better as the former Naval Reserve property. From that first year, we began a cooperative between the city, Humane Extension, and a national group called National Able. They worked with those, it was 50 or 55 and older, with job placement, career changes, resources, and those kinds of areas. From that first year of 25 to 30 raised beds, we are now at 160 plus. When the senior center closed a number of years ago downtown, those rooftop beds moved to the community garden. And it is all ages. They're raised beds. We space them apart, so there's room between them. And we're taking reservations still, and there's a waiting list. We're going to returning gardeners first, but that has been hugely popular. I didn't think we'd ever get over 100 beds when we first started that, but here we are. Here we are. The dog park started much the same way. And again, where there's not a defined leash ordinance here in the city, I wasn't sure how that was gonna work and go, how long it would sustain itself. Well, it's 3 pens later and used every day and by hundreds of folks. Continues to be a popular destination for dogs and their owners. That's worked out well. Worked out well. I mentioned the waterfront. That is a unique and important amenity for the city and really for the region. Given what has happened down there, we just added engineering, managed and led a project to extend the walking path even further beyond Dutton Street to essentially the city's parking lot. So you can walk on the waterfront from Broad Street Park all the way down to 395 on a paved walkway. We maintained that throughout the year. Try to keep it clear of snow and ice as best we can. So the walkways are plowed and/or we have a smaller unit that does some of the walkways behind the Sea-Dog because it's easier to get a tractor and machine in there than a truck. But those are maintained and lit year round. And you can walk all the way from Broad Street Park to 395 on a paved lit walkway. So there's plenty of green space there for everyday use, for the community to use, and certainly the venue on the other side, as well as all the other events that happen down there. And that's one of the areas we try to balance, is events that happen down there and still maintaining the daily community use. For example, we don't allow events to block the walkways. If you're gonna have an event, it's gotta stay within the confines of the green space, so that folks can still walk the length of the waterfront. That's a busy process for us, event management, with the implementation of the park ranger program. It's gonna be easier for us to manage that. The boating piece of that, the harbor piece of it, is busy for us as well. I think you've all seen the last couple of years, American Cruise Lines has returned, which allows us to put in that heavy vessel dock. We have a couple of groups that have done river history events down there using that dock. The paddle dock that we call Dock 1 is canoe and kayak friendly. It's easier to get in, much easier. The flows sit lower in the river, so you can get on them much easier. And then docks 2, 3, and 4 are recreational boating. 2 and 3 are more of a short-term opportunity, and dock 4 is seasonal. And things go, we can align the contractors, we should have moorings out in the river.
No.
Yes. Should have a couple of moorings out in the river. Our plan is, we got authorization to put moorings in the river, and then we'll add a float to that to create docking opportunities out in the river. If you've been down there on either the 4th of July or any concert night, there's not uncommon to see 20, 25 boats in the river just hanging out on a summer night. Talked about garden. We talked about Sawyer Arena already, Hayford Park, Mansfield Stadium is one of the city's facilities that we've transitioned a management from Little League, and that's going to transition fully into the city. The skate park has been located permanently there.
After it's bounced around the city looking for its
I can
final.
finally check that box. Yes, I can finally check that box. Skate park's been immensely popular, always has been. That was one of my first projects to work on here, and I came here a number of years ago. Was locating a skate park, and if you may or may not recall, the first skate park was in a parking lot in front of the old Bangor Auditorium. That group of youth, they worked at it. It was about a year process to get from that first meeting at the library to the structures that we had in the parking lot. It was that group of youth standing in front of service organizations and making their pitch, and they pulled it off. And the one that you see at Hayford now is not much the same way, cooperatively between the city and a group of skaters. So it's worked out. It's worked out very well. We talked about Panco already. We talked about events. I guess I'll stop there. Questions, comments, things I should take away from tonight?
I just have one question, so I'm just really curious. I love the 160 beds for the garden. Does anyone ever donate food anywhere, like any vegetables to like a homeless shelter or?
Some individuals do. I mean, it's not something that we require of gardeners necessarily, but I do know there's been groups, and we have a couple of groups that have rented beds that will do that. And off the top of my head, I can't remember their specific names, but yeah, we have had groups that do that.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's meant to make use of that property that sat vacant for I don't know how many years. It's making some great use of the property, and it's allowed us, yes, I'm gonna say it, to grow.
Putty, wah, wah.
To add the beds over the years, and there's still space there to continue to add beds. We've got a gentleman who's been our de facto garden master over there. He volunteers. Been there since the beginning. Kind of helps gardeners guide them through. We do specify some do's and don'ts about taking care of your individual beds and that sort of thing, but it's worked out fantastic.
So, just curious about, sort of the trend and the progress towards public restrooms.
I have that on my list down here.
You do?
later, in case somebody didn't bring it up.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just
Yeah.
asking sort of what,
So
You know-
I'll,
yeah, go ahead.
do you want to leave it to later in the
Yeah.
agenda?
No, that's fine. No, I just I had made notes of things that I thought were relevant and I'm happy to cross them off as other people bring them up.
So we have, actually, they'll open tomorrow.
They open tomorrow.
We did a request for proposals to fabricate up to 6
Mhm.
outdoor public restrooms. We'll see how those come back tomorrow. I did get some questions actually by potential,
Oh, that's good. That makes me feel, he was all excited that he didn't have any big questions from bidders and I said, oh, that's not good.
That's not good. You're not that good at writing them, dude.
Exactly.
Nice
He thought I
try.
did a good job and I said, I'm not sure.
So, that's the structure side of the discussion, and then in the next few weeks, we'll have some public discussion about potential locations and that sort of thing, but that's kind of where we're at.
And there will be a lot of public notice about that.
Mhm.
But it, happy to hear, we kind of rolled it out and, it was mixed results.
I don't know if this is a segue or not, but I do want to mention, and we're pretty excited about it. We're wrapping up, the feasibility study to replace both Park and Rec Center and Soy Arena. We've been at it, this study for probably a better part of a year,
Mhm.
maybe at least 10 months. So to give you a quick context and history of that, we've also done a facility master plan. And the consultant that we contracted with, really laid out in an easy to follow progression, potential projects for each of our facilities around the city. Including that master plan was this feasibility study, to replace the Park and Rec Center and Soy Arena. So that's just about done, if not 99% done, so that we can get that wrapped up and provide us the next steps of what potentially could happen for new facilities. As I've alluded to, and if you've been in either facility, we have been making the best use of the Armory down on Main Street, the former Armory. Soy Arena, if you have lived here for any length of time, went up in pieces over the years. It started out as an outdoor rink, went to a roof, went to walls, went to a chiller, went to locker rooms. And we're now the equipment that we use to maintain the ice, maintain the facility is aging and will need to be replaced. So, this study, we've had great conversation and great engagement from stakeholders, the community, through surveys, meetings, to get some really good feedback on what the community would like to see in a new facility going forward. So that's pretty exciting. But I just wanted to
Start crossing off my list.
mention that. I mentioned the forest management plan. We're also in draft form right now, for a management plan for Cascade Park. Cascade is a signature park for us. It's a destination not only for citizens here in the community, but folks from around the region, state, wherever, people go by that park, stop, get out, walk around.
We're actually looking at context of it, whether it would qualify under the national under the historic registry.
Right.
Yep.
Part of the elements of that reference were referenced in the draft that we have for Cascade. The fountain in the pool itself and the falls to grotto. That's all the original, much of the original hardware from when the park was constructed back in the mid-30s. So certainly it's time. But one of the charges we gave our consultant to try and maintain as much of the historical integrity and whatever suggestions, concepts that they develop, take us to the next step for design engineering. So working on that as well. All right, I'll take some more questions.
Parks and Rec, you can talk forever.
If there aren't any other questions, I do have 2 questions, and I don't want to hog any time if they haven't. Okay. The first, unfortunately, our vice chair couldn't be here tonight, and so this is something she feels very passionate about. And that is the language that we're using when we're hosting dances or things like that, or events where we specifically are calling out genders. Daddy, daughter, mother, son, all of these things, we know that other cities have gone to using child parent or, family dances. What are the, what's prohibiting us from taking those steps, using that kind of language? I know initially we had brought this up previously and you already had done your advertising for this year and we understand that. So what can we do now going forward to use more inclusive language?
Start to work on trying to do that.
Yeah.
So the next event that we've traditionally done is around Mother's Day.
Mhm.
So we can certainly work on if there's ways to message that differently.
Yeah, and I don't want to ruin necessarily anything you
No.
have planned this year, because we know a lot of people, they kind of look forward to these things, and, certainly we don't want to disrupt if people have that, but the flip side is we have to be cognizant and aware of
Understood. No,
family dynamics.
We understand
So,
that. We understand
um,
that. And we've tried to do that, a little bit of that over the years and
Yeah.
change some of the messages we've been doing. But certainly there's an opportunity to start a conversation about the Mother's Day event. It's scheduled around that day.
Right.
Much like the Valentine's event is scheduled on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
The event I alluded to earlier with the Cross Center is probably gonna be around Halloween, so that'll be a Halloween themed event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, we will take a look at, we have time still, I don't believe we put that out yet, the Mother's Day event.
Yeah, it just happens to be when you have friends who live in other places and they post things, I just happen to see down in
Understood.
Thompson, they called their Valentine's Day child parent, parent-child,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, I hadn't seen that version yet, so if there's.
That's not a bad idea. We try to, in the language that we use, not necessarily designate one or the other, but if there's an easier, way to communicate that,
Yeah.
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I know at Down East at one point in time, they did a family dance, right? So no matter what your family looked like, it was an opportunity for everyone to dress up. And they had a photographer, for some of them, that's their only time
Yeah.
having a family portrait. So analyzing those opportunities, knowing how far in advance you do have to advertise for them.
No, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. One of the dynamics that came to our attention, with both of these events is the parent dynamic.
Mm.
So we make sure to say things like if it's a caregiver or other family member.
Yeah.
In some of the advertising, recognizing that dynamic is different.
Yeah.
For every child, so.
Was there anyone have any other? Go ahead.
How's Park and Rec dealing with transgender bathrooms?
So we don't identify most of the bathrooms in the building and as well as some of our facilities. We're getting better at that and improving on that. We're trying to balance in working with the school and trying to mimic what happens in schools as well. So most of them are not, they're neutral.
Does Bangor have a problem with that?
Are you referring to Bangor School?
Yeah, Bangor schools.
I'm not aware of problems. I don't know, I'm not in the schools day to day, so I don't know that there's problems one way or the other.
Let's say about 2 weeks ago, Brewer had a meeting.
We'll be addressing that.
And then I just wanted to see the difference between.
I'm not aware of any issues that brought to our attention at Parks and Rec, one way or the other. I haven't been made aware of any issues, and I can't speak for the school department because I'm not in the schools every day. And I don't.
Just wanted to see the difference between the kids in Brewer and the kids in Bangor, because the kids in Bangor have a very good, I think, rapport with that.
Yeah,
But I went to that Brewer meeting, Jeff's Catering.
yeah, I don't know.
It's very different. It's a hot topic.
So for those who aren't aware, there was a meeting a couple weeks ago, and it is something that will be coming up. We maybe can talk about it just as we can do it right now. That will be discussed in the next meeting. A group held a meeting at Jeff's Catering in regards to an incident that happened at Brewer Schools and bathroom usage. And they held a listening session, and there was a lawyer, I believe, present, who was kind of also helping host
Sign of moderate.
time. Yeah. And so that discussion has started to make its way, obviously, into Bangor, because I believe you had actually received some marketing.
I went there, I went to the meeting, and there's a lot of feedback that was negative and
Yeah.
positive, but it was, how can I put it, is it more for the kids or is the parents bringing all this out? Because from what I got, when I went to the meeting, it's the parents that are pushing the most of the agenda for the children. The children have basically no say in it. It's what one side is very one-sided to me when
I think the way I could see this, maybe entering your world would be at the pools. You know, you have male, female bathroom changing areas. You know, is there an opportunity to have just single rooms, you know, that someone can go in and change to that's not tied to gender? Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, in some of our existing buildings and the structure that they have now, we did set aside a single room, changing room at Panko. We certainly have opportunity if the need to arise at Parks and Rec to do the same thing. When we have the need for, when hockey teams use Sawyer Arena, we try to manage locker rooms in a way that best fits the kids playing. So, yeah, no, I don't know of any issues.
I'm glad.
I'm not aware of any issues
No.
we've had at Parks.
And the
Rec.
superintendent's gonna be here at the
Yeah.
next meeting, so you'll
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
good time.
I'm glad.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then my second question, I'm gonna take my chair hat off for just a second. This actually relates to inclusion. You know, I've loved raising my children here in Bangor, and we definitely take advantage of, you know, the pools and the skate park, and we did Kids Cave. Unfortunately, our experience with Kids Cave is that the individuals who are hired to babysit children don't receive enough proper training, in particular when it comes to children with developmental disabilities. And every time I advocated for that, I heard we don't have enough time to offer any training. They're just high school students. And that really is an insufficient answer. Whether it's a formalized onboarding process or, you know, some sort of recorded training or something that you offer. When you think about the amount of time these individuals spend with young adults, some who might be identified, some who might not be identified, that experience, you know, can be traumatizing to a child if they have a negative experience. And gyms can be very loud. And as you noted, there's a limit on daycare settings, you know, and so this is the only option a family has who has a child with some sort of developmental disability or other, you know, things. That's very tricky. And, you know, I would just like to know what steps has been made for better inclusion, to me, which means better training of the individuals who are working with you.
So the training piece of it, it is a balance between the transition we have and the time we have with our staff and trying to ensure that we can provide as much training opportunities as possible with their schedules and however their other pieces of their life works. I will share with you that our current childcare coordinator comes from a behavioral background, has actually implemented some different trainings for the staff to participate in, has done more with sensory recognition. We have, you know, I'm gonna horribly gloss over what Tricia's been doing, but she's been able to address and better balance getting our Kids Cave staff trained as best as we can. However, that staff has now transitioned to relying on Trish to better meet the needs of individual kids that need that special, that individual attention. So to answer your question, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to, and I apologize, if I'll be able to address your individual concerns as far as the experience you had. But certainly to your question about training, our current childcare coordinator has been able to improve that. She sits down with them as a staff every day. And if there are situations that have arisen through the course of the day, how can we have better handled that? Perhaps there's an opportunity to sit down and with some training as you come in a little earlier. If there's a situation that you don't feel you have the background to handle, they will seek out Trish to help them with that. So I think that has improved some of the individual needs of some of our individual participants. And again, certainly, I don't know, but I think we've made improvements in trying to get staff trained as practically as we can with the amount of time that we see them and balancing that with their own individual schedules.
Yeah. I'm very pleased to hear that something is in place because when, like I said, in our experience, nothing was in place. And I just think of who comes next, right? Who's coming through your door next? And that's the important thing as we know more and more young adults, like kids are being identified, making sure we have that. And, my next question for you would be is if you lose Trish, is your training or is your stuff in place so the next person who comes in can just step right into it and carry on with what you have? Because those people who are trained are hard to find.
They are hard to find. You're absolutely right. They're hard to find. And to answer your question, by having Trish and a current childcare coordinator in place, it certainly has created awareness for us that these are important pieces to make sure that we include. So if indeed comes a time when we have to replace Trish, these are some of the qualities we're going to look for. And she came to us from an entirely different background, which is often the case with folks, and regardless of Parks and Rec or whatever discipline you're in, it's the background and the toolkit that people bring to you that often improves a particular program. And she certainly has done that, so.
I just want to underscore that, when I was asking to be on this particular committee, it was because I had biracial special needs kids who I have not brought over to the United States yet. So they're overseas right now. And part of being on this committee, part of getting involved in the city was like, is this city ready for kids like mine? And if not, can I be part of helping the city become the kind of place that my kids can go to? And so I've stopped short of bringing them here, and for some of the concerns that were just raised right there. So I just want to underscore that as just one more parent with the same concern, and I'm sure there's a few more. So I personally would love to see action and some kind of systemic change there that could be reported back to us at some point this year, just from my personal standpoint. Because that would be really important.
One of the ideas I've tossed around for a while with some favor, not, is the idea of pursuing Bangor becoming an autism certified city. And what it does is you identify 5 sectors, and Parks and Rec is one of them, and they help provide training. And it's one of those things where I'm like, is there actually an interest from the stakeholders in the community to have that? And it sounds like you identified that as something that in your area. So, knowing is half the battle, right? Knowing that you have to do that. So I think it'd be interesting, if any of these conversations go further, having more yous and the Ys and the other, individuals coming to the table, because you can also share your experiences of what you've learned onboarding and learning, in these particular situations. But like I said, my hope is that I don't completely dissuade someone from, their actions, but from where we were to where we are now, there has been growth, and that is nice to see. I would love to learn more about what that actually is looking like in practice there, So maybe I'll have you come back and.
Certainly. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions for Tracy while we are?
Let's
go.
Okay, so they're quick and easy. They're quick and easy because they're one-word answers. How many acres do we maintain?
1,200 acres.
Okay, so understand that parks maintenance is one of the most significant portions of our budget. We don't talk about it, but without park maintenance, we don't do a lot of the outdoor activities that we're talking about. And there's a small group of temporary seasonal employees who are maintaining 1,200 acres. So
Thank you.
be thoughtful of that. I also wanted to point out that we are on a regular rotation for the replacement of our playground equipment. And Tracy has on his radar as part of our master plan is how we make sure that going forward as we replace playgrounds, that we do identify and look at opportunities for inclusiveness, for sensory options that don't, maybe not currently exist or don't exist enough or aren't as well represented as they should be.
Adult swim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
No, it's not.
actually something they were looking, I don't know if that's in the final plans for Pickering Square or not.
I don't know. Um,
And then
go ahead.
I'm gonna cut you off because you'll keep talking. And we've got 6 minutes.
It's not, by the way, for the square.
Pardon me?
It's, the swings aren't in the plan.
Oh, they are the final one? Ah, okay. So my final thought was just to share that we're actually working on developing and deploying some technology that will actually allow us to capture how many visits we have. I can't tell you the number of visits in our forest. Our city forest is vastly popular. And, you know, we can have anecdotal evidence that, oh, it's well used.
Mhm.
But being able to have data, to show, I think the city of Bangor has done more for parks, for green space and open space and a variety of terrains than most other communities around us. And I think it is a draw. I think it's one of the reasons people should choose to live here. Not just visit, become part of it. And these are my funny stories about the city forest, is I have seen an email both from an individual who has visited our city forest, concerned that there was a bear. And I said, well, okay, bears live in the forest. And the same thing for a moose. So I've had emails both to that, and it kind of, and it's, you know, it's great that you have an opportunity to see that kind of wildlife. And I'm gonna also point out that this, you know, a good portion of the city forest is an old landfill. And that, you know?
No, I had no idea.
Yes,
Kittredge Road, you down Kittredge Road side.
correct. So it was the Kittredge Road, that was the city's owned landfill when landfills were a thing.
Explains the hill.
Correct. And that
Okay.
landfill was closed in 1992 or 3. It was capped.
Not yet, not any later than that.
Yeah, so it was capped in the early 90s in accordance with DEP regulations in place at the time. And it goes to show that you can repurpose something that once was something else.
Essex Woods is.
And I was gonna say Essex, because where the slide park is, right?
That's where the dog park and the sliding hill
Right,
is.
so if you think about, you know, when you're coming down the interstate and you used to see the kids sliding down, that also was a dump years ago. That had been gone since the 40s or 50s,
50s, because I think that's when Kittredge Road was opened.
Right.
When that closed.
So,
Kittredge Road.
that was a dump. So I think we've done a good job repurposing.
Thank you so much for coming. and
I appreciate the
giving us an
opportunity.
Update and,
So it sounds like I went too long.
No.
That's what I heard from that.
You do a
no,
lot.
listen,
Yeah,
we
but it's-
can, we
but-
like to
but-
talk here.
But he talks about all of the things we do for the community, and all of that's important. But I think it's really important to understand the amount of facilities and acreage that we're maintaining. It is huge. And it's a huge undertaking. And every year, something else, and it's great that we have an opportunity. It's great that we have an opportunity to add more docks. It's great that we have an opportunity to add more moorings. But what it does is it creates additional work so are we actually this year, your Parks and Rec director will not be the harbor master.
No, I'm gonna get fired.
Correct.
Um,
So he has been filling the role of harbor master as well. And
Park Ranger will be the harbor master.
that's correct. So he's found a new friend to be his harbor master. So
I
there's a
think
lot going on.
the update is, I think, really crucial because we're talking about quality of life here and making sure that all individuals, regardless of, you know, how they access and view and live in this world, that we are able to offer that to them. And so, you know, as we're saying, you know, as being stated here, you do a lot and it's a lot for the community. And I know I spend a lot of my summers hanging out at Banco, watching the pool, and then one kid's on the skate park and the other's on the swing. And I'm like, I just wish I had a place to put like my blanket with a table, you know, that's my only thing. But that's something we've done for several years. And that's kind of what we're trying to improve upon here in Bangor, is improving the quality of life. And you're part of that. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Come back anytime.
I'll hang out for the rest of it.
Okay. All right, so we have no policy.
Nope.
Today, and I think for number 5, what, I think we really wanna hone in here is the fact that we're throwing this back to you, right? So our hope is that every meeting going forward, that if you as your group has met, that someone can report back out to us, what has been happening. I know like with the equity index, there was a lot of interest in that, so, getting a report out, what have you reviewed,
I
takeaways?
started that kind of research, so I have a document that I'm gonna share with the group, so if
Beautiful.
you two currently. have
Nice.
there.
Beautiful. For those who are doing events and education, we do have some things on there that we know are, things that have happened or been brought up. So we did the Pride table last year with a lot of, with great success. Andre, you had brought up Hike for the Homeless. Was that
Yes.
you? Yep.
Yeah, that's coming up in April and, seems like every group I'm involved in is involved with hike. So my church, Hammond Street, is sponsoring and we'll have a group of walkers. ARP Maine will also be sponsoring, as I recommended that to the state director and they jumped on board in that. So we'll have some walkers. And so, anyone here, if they wanna,
Join a team
join
or
a
create a
team
team.
or just participate
What
as
is
an
the date?
individual.
April.
I think it's first starting in April.
It's like the ninth, I think.
So guess what has to happen for the Hike for the Homeless? They have to apply for an event permit for Tracy.
Someone's gonna know that info.
I have seen that one. I've seen that.
I've got it somewhere too. I'll start putting dates on here, because I think I know you had the first planning meeting with Bangor Pride
Yeah.
as well last week.
They're zeroing in on the 22nd of June.
All right.
I believe it's that traditional Saturday rotation.
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. Because the following would have been the
April sixth,
April 6th.
Thank you.
starts at 9:30. Oh, no, that's my time to get there. I don't know what time it actually starts.
Okay.
We should start at 10. Yeah, I think we start at 10.
So our hope is that you as committees, that you're kind of communicating with each other, and if there's something there, maybe it's just like a monthly check-in, has anything popped up on your radar, or for some of you, if the equity index, or if you're knowing of events and you want to coordinate those efforts, that you're doing that and reporting back to the committee. Let me get back to that.
And if it's okay with the members, if nobody has any objection, what I'd like to do is, now that I sort of have the committee members, is to I'll have somebody from my office kind of share, here are the emails for this group, here's everybody's cell phone, so that you have a way to get in touch with each other. Is anybody opposed to that?
I don't have a new number to give you, but.
Okay, so you send me your new number and we'll be good. Okay.
Are there any questions on subcommittees? So far, we're feeling okay? Okay. Any other business from other committee members that they want to bring up here? No? That leaves it to Debbie and manager updates.
Yeah, so, I can't even remember what last night was so long ago. I can't remember what my manager updates were last night.
Can't help you with that one.
You weren't paying attention to everything I said. I will, manager updates for right now, what I've got is the upcoming meeting. So the March meeting, the school DEIB, folks will be here. Superintendent Tager will be here, so, we'll have that opportunity to have those discussions. Community and economic development would like to come back. They've been doing some stakeholder interviews, regarding housing, and I know that they'd like the opportunity to perhaps do a quick check-in with you, and maybe, I think some of that conversation, we can frame it however you want. I also know that there was an interest in doing some accessibility. Our council chair had agreed to do sort of an abbreviated version of some accessibility training, so maybe that's an opportunity next month as well.
I'm not sure if it's, worthwhile.
I've got
Debbie.
bus for later, because I
Yeah.
think there's some conversations around public transit that I wanted to make sure we circled back up to.
And, I'm not sure if anyone watched the meeting or anything last night, or if it came out of workshop, but the city council decided not to do a
Mhm.
statement about the ceasefire in Gaza. I just feel like it's important for this committee to know that that came out from last night's meeting as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did they give a reason? Because when I went 2 weeks ago, there was so much support for it.
So I got the sense that as much support shows up in person, I think after that meeting, they got a variety of conversations involved. And I think that the opinions of our residents are as varied as the number of residents. And I think that that was sort of the guiding piece, is that they felt that, you know, we want to be respectful of everybody in our community. We don't agree with genocide, we don't agree with, you know, the horrific acts that are happening. But, and not to say that, but horrific acts happen in our city, in our state, and in our nation every day. And internationally, and, you know,
They also indicated there really hadn't been a precedent before, of city council making,
because the concern always becomes if then if you don't acknowledge the next,
you know,
Mm.
you don't want to create hurt in a community that may be hurting that you didn't recognize. So that's kind of where
mhm.
I felt things landed.
Was 6-3, correct? If I remember correctly. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, good.
We had talked about having Kara come and present to us at some point this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping next month.
Oh,
She
okay.
had a huge, she's orchestrating a very significant, company-wide event.
Right,
I think it's being held
Yeah.
Thursday, so
yeah.
Yeah.
The other person that might be good is Marwa.
Marwa, yeah.
Have other cities in Maine issued statements?
Yes.
City of Portland.
Okay. So,
And I think the other thing that happened at last night's meeting, would be the
UMA
UMA
students.
students
Yep.
who came by speaking
Yeah.
about an incident that happened recently and their proximity to the encampment behind their buildings.
And the follow-up to that is, that the university administration is coordinating a meeting with the students, and they've asked a number of us, the city, to participate. We're happy to do that. So, we're gonna have more discussion and opportunity for the students to kind of share their experience. That's the first time we've heard from the students, and it was, you know, and I was happy to see folks be comfortable to come and share.
Yeah.
That's what we're there for. One of the reasons.
Anything coming up on their city council meetings on their agendas that we should be aware of?
I tried to get them on here, so I thought putting the review of the council agenda items on here was
Yeah,
helpful.
didn't know if there was anything else.
I think the next
Crystal ball.
things, so the thing to be putting in your brains is that we will start, the city council will begin doing budgets.
I knew you were gonna say budget.
Cause you can't take the finance director. I just can't.
Just put the same one in as last year.
So, we will start a very public budget review session in, mid-April. So, there's a lot of needs, there's a lot of needs in our community, and our residents have a limited ability to continue to pay. So it's a balance.
Yeah. So for those who are new on the committee, we kind of have a budget. It's a little mini budget under your
I've got it
budget.
hidden.
And the intent of it is, if like there were trainers or things that we want to bring in, you know, like especially, let's say if there's someone we found that might be a great trainer for city employees or something to that effect that wanted to talk about.
So most of us have, so every department in the city has a training budget. So I thought it was sort of also more of an opportunity, if there's an opportunity to do community type things. So I think it initially started too, is maybe at one point there was a talk, you know, should we sponsor events at the library? Should we
Right.
be bringing topics and, you know, forward for discussion and public discourse?
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity for that too. So
So for those who are new, there are ideas that come to mind of things that might be timely or, you know, again, events or things that we might be able to partner, you know,
Yeah.
collaborate with.
Yeah.
We currently have funding. I say currently.
Would it be appropriate for us, like, because I was talking about, just as an example, the hike for the homeless.
right.
Would it have been appropriate for us as a committee to be one of the sponsors for an event like that?
So that's where it gets a little dicey in my
Okay.
opinion, and it becomes from the fact that it's public funds.
Okay,
So public funds for a particular cause, there's always an opportunity that someone will feel slighted. I think versus an opportunity for, you know, a presentation that's related to public education, educating our public, I think is really the core of what we do.
Okay.
And I think that kind of ties around to that, the calendar we had made, which talks about
Right.
different important holidays and months and things like that, and why we are hoping that the Events and Education Committee, this might be an opportunity to use some of that
That's correct.
funding for things like
Right.
that.
And that could tie into like the public transit discussion on terminology and like the societal understanding of the importance of the public transit system. There could be something there as well, because that's serving the whole community.
And just be thoughtful too, that we have advertising money for public transit.
Yeah.
So we're all about messaging and sharing and educating. What I think sometimes is helpful is especially for this committee and for anybody in our community to come forward and say, did you think about talking about it this way? Sometimes we live in it so deep that we don't always recognize the opportunities to share the information in a different way, so. We're always looking for a way. It's really, we sort of do, I think we're trying, we put more resources towards communication, trying to make sure that we're calling it out. There is so much that happens in this world and everybody is busy and everybody has things going on. So it's really, I can't tell you how many times we've come to talk about something and somebody looks at me and goes, I didn't know this. And I said, oh my heavens. Yes. And here are the 14 times we've mentioned it and the 5 places we had it. And I get it. People are busy.
Mhm.
So how are we more strategic about zeroing in and feeling relevant and different? I think we get caught up in the noise.
I have noticed it on social media, so
Good.
that's working.
All right, good.
The colorful infographics and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think it helps taking our meetings off the feed and pushing them to YouTube. Because if you go back into November and October, all you see is meeting after meeting. Like, oh my God, it's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
And now there is something new every day, and it's trying to highlight those things that we hear from the public and that we think are important. But if we're missing something, we need to know. We need everybody to. The folks who are working now are newer employees, so that helps. Because we look at them and we say, what would you think would be exciting?
Right,
But do you not know?
right.
So
Anything
That's it.
else? Okay.
it's 7:43. I went over my 6 minutes.
It's all
Okay.
okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.